Screech by TarynMcT. Read by Oakshadow5. Chapter 37. Yamada-sensei had been called in to assist on a raid that Tsunade was putting together, as was Ezawa-sensei. So Denki was sitting next to Hitoshi at the briefing. They weren't the only students in attendance though. Kirishima, Asui, and Uraraka were there, as were the big three.
At Red Riot's debut fight the other day, a type of drug I'd never seen before was shot into Tamaki,
the hero Fatgum stated.
A drug that destroys quirks.
The room was tense at that, and Amajiki raised a hand and transformed it into a cow's hoof.
I'm fine,
he said quietly.
The effects only seem to last a few hours.
Fatgum nodded at that.
After analyzing the contents, we discovered that human blood and cells were inside. In other words, that effect came from a person. A quirk that destroys quirks.
Night-Eye aimed a remote at the projector in the room, and an image of a man with a green and purple coat wearing some sort of plague doctor mask showed up.
The young head of the Shihasakai, Chisaki Kai. His quirk is Overhaul. It is a quirk that allows him to break things apart and then piece them back together however he wants to.
He paused, looking over the gathered students and heroes.
And a bullet that can break down quirks. Chisaki has a daughter named Eri. There are no records or details about her birth, but when Mirio encountered her the other day, she had a large number of bandages wrapped around her arms and legs.
Denki felt his stomach drop at that.
Please, no. Please don't be implying what I think you're implying.
He whispered so quietly, only Hitoshi heard him, as evidenced by the hand that latched onto his.
We're wondering if Chisaki is turning his daughter's body into bullets and selling them,
he said, confirming Denki's worst fear.
Wouldn't this have been resolved already if your intern had just taken the child?
A hero named Rocklock demanded, an accusatory look in his eyes as he glared at Togata. So Night-Eye matched Rocklock's glare with one of his own.
The one most frustrated here right now is Lemillion. Pointing out things you think he should have done will help no one. He was patrolling alone and did not have any means to protect bystanders from Overhaul if he had taken the girl. He is not to blame here.
Togata nodded and then smacked both of his cheeks and gave a determined, strained smile.
We will definitely take Eri next time and protect her.
That's right. That is our goal. Denki thought to himself, also nodding. Izuku was rubbing at his shoulders, trying to massage the soreness out of them. It had been just over 1 week since his wings had returned, and he was doing so many flight exercises with Keigo and Tokuyami and Dark Shadow. Yesterday had been dedicated to showing Dark Shadow how to shape herself to resemble wings and getting a little bit of lift. But today, Izuku snickered to himself as he noticed one of the items he missed and plucked it off. Today was fun. Every Friday, Izuku and Hitoshi ate dinner with their dads, and tonight was no different, so Izuku wasn't surprised to hear Hitoshi knock on his door to collect him for dinner. He was, however, surprised to see Hitoshi in such a bad mood. "What's up?" he asked as they walked to the elevator. "You've got this little crease in between your eyebrows, right here." Izuku poked Hitoshi in the crease only to get his hand swatted away.
"Wish I could tell you,"
he replied with half his usual smirk.
"Unfortunately, it's classified, so unless Dad says anything."
Hitoshi trailed off when he saw Izuku nod in understanding. "It has to do with that mission briefing Dad mentioned, I take it?" The two boys stepped off the elevator and Izuku glanced around the common room, noticing a few other students were also looking to be in darker moods than normal. Tsu, Uraraka, and Kirishima.
"Huh. What are you thinking?"
Hitoshi asked as they walked out of the dorm building and towards the teacher dorms. Just an observation, nothing more," Izuku said, not answering the question.
"Your observations are usually correct,"
Hitoshi complained, earning a laugh from Izuku. The two of them continued onto the teacher's dorms in quiet, but once they made it to the floor the dads were on, Izuku perked up. "Oh, you're going on a raid? And Denki's going too?"
How? Oh, they're talking about it, aren't they?
Hitoshi sighed dramatically and muttered.
Stupid owl hearing.
Izuku quickly ran to the door and opened it. "Stop talking about classified raid stuff. I could hear you in the hallway, and I'm sure I'm not supposed to," he said in lieu of a greeting. Dad snorted.
"Honestly, I'd rather you were coming along. If I get held up at any point, this guy is going to be difficult for the others to take down."
Papa raised an eyebrow at that.
"And yeah, I thought that's why I was asked to come along?"
Izuku nodded. "As interesting as this all is, since I'm not going to be there, I don't think I'm supposed to be hearing this." Izuku had seen Denki in the living room, so he walked up to him and nuzzled his head against his neck and chirped.
"Well, hello to you too, Suzu."
Denki laughed and kissed the top of Izuku's head. You sounded upset when I was coming up to the door, Izuku offered, and raised his head to kiss Denki's cheek. I don't know what happened, and you can't tell me, but I'll do what I can to cheer you up until you are allowed to tell me. You act like you've been on raids before, Papa commented. Well, Izuku blushed. Not officially, but I've watched a few, listened in on them, and caught a few runners when things went sideways. Dad groaned and put his head in his hands.
Of course that was you. Why wouldn't it be you?
Soon after, the 5 of them were sitting around the table, eating the chicken katsu that Papa had made. Papa had also made brownies for dessert, and that alone told Izuku that even though Papa was acting as if nothing was wrong, something about this raid was bothering him too. With a wry little grin, Izuku decided it was going to be up to him to lift everyone's moods. So, I know you can't talk about today, at least not what's bothering you, so I'll talk about mine. Izuku nodded and took a bite of dinner. So, you all know I'm helping Kei teach Tokoyami how to fly, right? Hitoshi snorted at that.
That's not what I heard.
He laughed when everyone looked at him.
I heard you're terrorizing him under the pretense of flight training, and he's just too busy trying not to die to complain.
Hey, you never even almost let him fall, Izuku defended himself. Keigo always had a few feathers ready to catch him if I couldn't, and we kept close enough to the buildings for Dark Shadow to grab hold if for some unknown reason both me and Kei missed him.
That's what he was scared of, falling and not being caught. It had nothing to do with the 2 biblically accurate angels following him around saying shit like, "Be not afraid."
Oh! Denki exclaimed suddenly. That makes more sense. He reached over and plucked a googly eye off of Izuku's neck that he must have missed. I was wondering why you had googly eyes stuck on you. That was the final push Papa needed to lose control of his barely contained laughter. Dad was trying not to laugh as he kept his quirk focused on Papa.
Maybe we should leave the kids out of this,
Shota signed to his husband as they were getting ready for bed, both because Hisashi had taken out his hearing aids and because he didn't want Izuku to hear. He had been thinking about the briefing for the raid all night, and he was wondering if it might not be too much for his students too soon. After hearing about that little girl, there's no way any of the kids will just leave her there, Hisashi replied. The only thing keeping them from screaming about it now is the fact that they'll be able to do something about it soon. Shota glared at the wall, but didn't argue with his husband's logic. Shota kept feeling uneasy for the next few days, but when the call came to mobilize, he realized that these kids were going, even if he tried to stop them. Shota glared at Izuku when he noticed he was among the rest of the kids who had been called for the raid.
You're not coming.
I know, I just wanted to say stay safe. Please. Don't worry about us, Suzu, Kaminari said as he hugged him. We'll be fine.
Yeah, Su, and make sure these idiots stay safe.
Hitoshi smirked, gesturing at Kaminari, Hisashi, and Shota. With a growl, Shota grabbed Hitoshi by the capture scarf he was wearing and started to drag him away as Hitoshi snorted and waved goodbye to his brother, Kaminari, Hisashi, and the rest of the students following closely. Shota and Hisashi kept a close eye on the students the entire trip to the raid location, and it was plain to see that all of the students were nervous, but they were ready. Shota hoped they all made it out of this with that same drive. The first raid was always the worst one. Hisashi ruffled his son's hair and they went to step next to one of the officers who were giving last-minute information to the assembled heroes. After night I used foresight on the Hasakai member, we discovered the existence of undocumented underground facilities at the head of the Hasakai's residence. Hisashi nodded along. We were able to confirm that the girl we are trying to rescue is being held in one of the rooms there. Although they were unable to uncover the entire underground layout, the path the man took is the shortest route to our target, and it's the best intel we could have for searching the Hasakai's expansive stronghold. However, another officer added, even if we had there, if they used their quirks freely on us, would it make the search difficult? Out of the corner of his eye, Hisashi saw Hitoshi sarcastically point to Shota and mutter something to Denki, who snorted, getting slapped on the shoulder by Asui. He was glad the students seemed to be doing okay. So, we have made a list to the best of our knowledge of quirks registered to Hasakai members. Please memorize this list. The officer handed out the list, showing the strongest members of the Shihasakai, the 8 bullets. Hisashi stood next to his husband, just existed next to him, where they both listened to the students chat amongst themselves. It's nice to be able to just pull this out, huh? We don't want to give them time to hide, so we want to identify and apprehend all the members as quickly as possible. Togata grinned to the other students. Things are moving fast now, huh? Asui croaked. You're energetic for how early this is. I'm getting nervous. From detective work to cooperation with the police, there's so much I don't know, Uraka exclaimed, lightly hopping on her toes. Right? Isn't that mysterious? Haru laughed. Yeah, schools don't really teach you much about things like this, but that's what these work studies are for.
I had a hard time when I first started,
muttered Amajiki nervously. All the pros are so calm, Kaminari pointed out. Hitoshi snorted at that. Yeah, it's because they're used to this. An officer walked over to the group. Heroes, things might get a little violent. If you see even a hint of suspicious behavior or resistance, please deal with it immediately. Fat Gum nodded and handed something to Amajiki. Tamaki, eat this. It's swordfish. Why swordfish? He asked, taking the snack. Thanks, I'll be sure to eat it. Hisashi let his attention snap back into focus when an officer turned to address them. We're up against gangsters who have survived until now. Don't let your guard down and carry out your respective tasks. We will commence the operation at 8:30. All hands, move out! Commence! Once they've read the warrant, charge in. I'm counting on everyone to move swiftly. He keeps saying the same thing over and over, Hisashi heard Kaminari complain. Yeah, it's like he doesn't trust us, Kirishima agreed. Uraka lightly slapped the back of Kirishima's shoulder. You know that's not what he means. Stop being mean. The officer who had the search warrant walked up to the front door and rang the bell. Almost as if they were just waiting for that, Katsukame Rikiya smashed open the door. He would have crushed the officer, but Hitoshi had reacted quickly enough to grab the officer in his capture scarf, pulling him to safety. You're right. I'm fine, thanks. What do you want? Bringing all these people so early in the morning? Katsukame exclaimed, barging into the gathered officers. He was quickly joined by a flood of Yakuza thugs from within, all aiming to protect their compound. We shouldn't split up our forces here. Ryukyu agency will take care of this, Ryukyu said as she grew into her larger dragon form. The rest of you go now, while you have the chance. Let's go support Ryukyu, Hisashi heard Uraka exclaim. Everyone, get in! Quickly! Quickly! It's Heroes and the police. We have a warrant to search your premises on suspicion of the manufacture and sale of illegal drugs. A search warrant? Who cares? yelled one of the thugs. Stop resisting! One of the heroes shouted. Hisashi didn't know who said it, but it didn't matter. There was that big guy too, and none of them scared. Used the shortest route to get to the target. The raid had begun, and he was determined to make sure that this raid was a success. Red eyes narrowed and a dark grin spread. Finally, Katsuki thought to himself. Some fucking action. He had been stuck here since Warper had dropped him off, promising that Beakface could heal his arm. And yeah, the beaky fuck had stopped the bleeding and healed the open wound, but the jackass couldn't be bothered to restore his fucking hand. He'll just have to take Deku's the next time he sees him. Bakugo. Katsuki looked up from the couch he was slumped on with his dark smirk still in place, knowing he was about to be asked to participate in a fight that was clearly happening. Just stay out of my fucking way! Beakface nodded and turned away. They're heading down to the lower levels. You can meet them head on if you would like, or have Mimic assist with an ambush. The choice is up to you. Oh my gosh, Bakugo is with the Yakuza. Oh no! And it's gonna be one crazy last chapter. And yes, next chapter is the last chapter of Screech. But anyways guys, I hope you all enjoyed chapter 37 of Screech, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!